I never planned to end my career with a sentence this heavy. But the day finally came when I stood in front of my own reflection and couldn't recognize the man staring back. Not the billionaire, not the genius, not the headline, just a tired human being, drained, hollowed out, running on reputation instead of soul. And that was the day I said the words the world never expected from me. I'm retiring. Not next year. Not after one final project. Not after another product launch or another impossible achievement. Now. Immediately. Completely. No one believed me at first. Because men like me are supposed to die working. Wired into machines. Replacing sleep with caffeine. Chasing the next breakthrough like oxygen. But let's start where this decision was born. Not in a boardroom. Not on a stage. Not during a press conference. It began in silence. Terrifying silence. The day everything felt pointless. I was in a room filled with million-dollar suits and billion-dollar conversations. Charts rising, investors smiling, cameras waiting. It was supposed to be a victory. But then, mid-sentence, while explaining projections and growth and strategy, something cracked inside me like thin glass. My voice stopped. My mind froze. Not because I forgot the numbers, but because I suddenly realized they meant nothing to me anymore. Those charts wouldn't comfort me when I was old. That revenue wouldn't hold my hand when I died. That success wouldn't remember my name. People would, or they wouldn't, if I kept living like this. Money builds empires, but time builds meaning. And I had traded time like it was worthless. I had everything and nothing. Cars. Bought them. Companies. Built them. Success. Drowned in it. But where was peace? Where was purpose? Where was something more real than applause and headlines? No answer. Just noise. Endless noise. Noise made of notifications, deadlines, meetings that lasted longer than sunsets, victories that felt exactly like the victories before them. Predictable, hollow, recycled. People envied my life. If only they knew how exhausted I was living it. The visit that broke me. Months later, a friend asked me to accompany him to visit his elderly father in a nursing home. I almost didn't go. I had meetings, deadlines, presentations, the usual excuses. But something nudged me. Call it instinct. Call it fate. I walked into that nursing home like it was a casual detour. But nothing about what I saw was casual. Rows of elderly people. Silent. Waiting. Forgotten by families too busy chasing the same kind of success that once owned me. Some stared at walls like they were staring back through time. Some whispered to memories no one else could hear. And some looked like they were already gone, just breathing out of habit. That room felt heavier than my entire career. Because in those eyes I saw something terrifying. Me. Older. Wealthy. Respected. But completely alone. I walked past a man who kept repeating the same sentence under his breath. I wish I had more time. Not more money. Not more awards. Not more fame. Just time. That sentence didn't leave my head for weeks. Because time is the one currency billionaires can't buy back. The decision no one saw coming. The next morning, I did something reckless. Or maybe for the first time in decades, something sane. I walked into the same boardroom where my life had always been defined, and instead of announcing expansion plans or futuristic goals, I said the words that felt like a bomb detonating in the room. I am stepping down. Permanently. Silence. Confusion. Disbelief. Because we celebrate ambition, but we never prepare for the moment ambition ends. I wasn't stepping away to rest. I wasn't stepping away to travel. I wasn't stepping away to enjoy wealth. I was stepping away to serve. To open a home, not for luxury, but for the forgotten. To spend my life with people the world left behind, not board members trying to squeeze another percentage of profitability. To work with my hands, not with numbers on a screen. To listen to stories, not to investment proposals. To help people who actually need help, not corporations already drowning in success. This wasn't charity. This was redemption. Why would a billionaire leave everything? Because success means nothing if humanity is missing. Because legacy isn't built from dollars. It's built from souls touched, lives changed, people uplifted. Because I realized the world doesn't need another billionaire. It needs compassion. It needs dignity for the forgotten. It needs someone who chooses people over profits. I want to be that person. Not someday now. And that is where this story begins. Not with power, but with purpose. Not with expansion, but with empathy. Not with wealth, but with humanity. This is not the story of how I got rich. This is the story of how I finally chose to become human again. I never planned to end my career with a sentence this heavy. But the day finally came when I stood in front of my own reflection and couldn't recognize the man staring back. Not the billionaire, not the genius, not the headline, just a tired human being, drained, hollowed out, running on reputation instead of soul. And that was the day I said the words the world never expected from me. I'm retiring. Not next year. Not after one final project. Not after another product launch or another impossible achievement. Now. Immediately. Completely. No one believed me at first. Because men like me are supposed to die working. Wired into machines, replacing sleep with caffeine, chasing the next breakthrough like oxygen. But let's start where this decision was born. Not in a boardroom. Not on a stage. Not during a press conference. It began in silence. Terrifying silence. The day everything felt pointless. I was in a room filled with million-dollar suits and billion-dollar conversations. Charts rising, investors smiling, cameras waiting. It was supposed to be a victory. But then, mid-sentence, while explaining projections and growth and strategy, something cracked inside me like thin glass. My voice stopped. My mind froze. Not because I forgot the numbers, but because I suddenly realized they meant nothing to me anymore. Those charts wouldn't comfort me when I was old. That revenue wouldn't hold my hand when I died. That success wouldn't remember my name. People would. Or they wouldn't, if I kept living like this. Money builds empires, but time builds meaning. And I had traded time like it was worthless. I had everything and nothing. Cars. Bought them. Companies. Built them. Success. Drowned in it. But where was peace? Where was purpose? Where was something more real than applause and headlines? No answer. Just noise. Endless noise. Noise made of notifications, deadlines, meetings that lasted longer than sunsets, victories that felt exactly like the victories before them. Predictable, hollow, recycled. People envied my life. If only they knew how exhausted I was living it. The visit that broke me. Months later, a friend asked me to accompany him to visit his elderly father in a nursing home. I almost didn't go. I had meetings, deadlines, presentations, the usual excuses. But something nudged me. Call it instinct. Call it fate. I walked into that nursing home like it was a casual detour. But nothing about what I saw was casual. Rows of elderly people. Silent. Waiting. Forgotten by families too busy chasing the same kind of success that once owned me. Some stared at walls like they were staring back through time. Some whispered to memories no one else could hear. And some looked like they were already gone, just breathing out of habit. That room felt heavier than my entire career. Because in those eyes I saw something terrifying. Me. Older. Wealthy. Respected. But completely alone. I walked past a man who kept repeating the same sentence under his breath. I wish I had more time. Not more money. Not more awards. Not more fame. Just time. That sentence didn't leave my head for weeks. Because time is the one currency billionaires can't buy back. The decision no one saw coming. The next morning, I did something reckless. Or maybe for the first time in decades, something sane. I walked into the same boardroom where my life had always been defined. And instead of announcing expansion plans or futuristic goals, I said the words that felt like a bomb detonating in the room. I am stepping down. Permanently. Silence. Confusion. Disbelief. Because we celebrate ambition, but we never prepare for the moment ambition ends. I wasn't stepping away to rest. I wasn't stepping away to travel. I wasn't stepping away to enjoy wealth. I was stepping away to serve. To open a home, not for luxury, but for the forgotten. To spend my life with people the world left behind, not board members trying to squeeze another percentage of profitability. To work with my hands, not with numbers on a screen. To listen to stories, not to investment proposals. To help people who actually need help, not corporations already drowning in success. This wasn't charity. This was redemption. Why would a billionaire leave everything? Because success means nothing if humanity is missing. Because legacy isn't built from dollars. It's built from souls touched, lives changed, people uplifted. Because I realized the world doesn't need another billionaire. It needs compassion. It needs dignity for the forgotten. It needs someone who chooses people over profits. I want to be that person. Not someday now. And that is where this story begins. Not with power, but with purpose. Not with expansion, but with empathy. Not with wealth, but with humanity. This is not the story of how I got rich. This is the story of how I finally chose to become human again. Because one day you wake up and realize the world remembers kindness longer than success. And I don't need more years to climb higher. I need years to give back, to sit beside the elderly and listen, to hold hands that tremble with age, to feed someone who has no one left to feed them, to prove that love still exists in a world obsessed with speed, profit, and progress, to trade achievements for meaning. I'm not here to inspire billionaires. I'm here to remind every human being watching this. If you spend your whole life climbing, one day you'll look down and realize you never stopped to live. And by the time you wanna, time might be gone. The day after my resignation, the world reacted exactly how I expected, with confusion, with shock, with disbelief so loud it shook the digital sky. News headlines exploded like fireworks fired from every continent, some calling it bravery, some calling it madness, some insisting it was a breakdown disguised as purpose. For years, people watched me as a symbol of progress, innovation, acceleration, but none were prepared to see me stop. I walked through my house that morning with a silence so unfamiliar it felt like someone turned off the universe. No vibrating phone, no endless emails, no calendar screaming for attention, just stillness. And for the first time in my life, I had no excuse to run. I stood in my kitchen, hands resting on a countertop I barely ever touched, realizing I didn't even know where half the utensils were. I lived inside airports, offices, boardrooms, not inside my own home. And when I finally sat at the dining table, alone, no team waiting, no assistant whispering reminders, I heard something terrifying. My own thoughts. I didn't know whether to feel free or frightened. Freedom is strange when you've been caged by ambition so long you no longer recognize the door. Most people think retirement means peace, comfort, finally slowing down. But for me, it felt like stepping off a moving train without knowing if the ground beneath me would hold. I poured a cup of coffee myself for the first time in years, and the steam rising from the mug looked like a soul escaping captivity. I took a sip. It tasted simple, painfully simple, and somehow more real than 1,000 achievements. No audience, no pressure, no race. Just me, a chair, and time, the thing I spent decades ignoring. But peace doesn't arrive instantly. It tests you first. That same morning, I felt an emptiness like a vacuum inside my chest. No schedule to chase, no deadline to fear, no goal to obsess over. It was like withdrawing from a drug called purpose, one I overdosed on daily. I paced through the house as if searching for a missing identity, because when work becomes your oxygen, quitting feels like suffocation. I thought retirement would feel like relief. Instead, it felt like death with breathing still attached. The world outside kept spinning at full speed, but I was standing still for the first time. And stillness is a mirror that reveals everything you spent years avoiding. I looked out the window and saw the elderly home I planned to build in my mind, a place where forgotten people would finally be seen, heard, valued. I promised myself that leaving the throne wasn't enough. I needed to replace power with service. That's when I made a decision, not a business decision, but a human one. I would visit the same nursing home again, not as a billionaire, not with cameras, not to donate money, but to spend time. Real time. I got in my car without security, without assistance, without anything that made me untouchable. For once, I wanted to be reachable, vulnerable, ordinary. When I reached the entrance, the same quiet stood like a doorway into truth. Aging people walking slowly down hallways, nurses speaking in gentle tones, wheelchairs gliding like time moving across a polished floor. This time, I didn't observe, I entered. The first person I sat with was a woman named Evelyn. White hair curled like paper burned at the edges, wrinkles like maps to places we could never go back to. She didn't know who I was, and that was perfect. We talked not about technology or success, but about childhood, oceans she once swam in, a husband she buried 50 years ago, children who rarely visited. Her voice shook as if carrying memories heavier than her bones. She told me she used to write love letters even when her husband sat beside her, just so she could remind him that love deserved to be spoken, not assumed. And then she looked at me with a softness I hadn't felt in decades and asked a question no investor ever asked me. "Son, who do you love like that?" I had no answer, and the silence after felt like a confession. I moved to another room where a man named Arthur sat beside a window tracing patterns on the glass. He was once a teacher, he told me. And every year he memorized the names of his students because he believed no child should ever feel invisible. But now in this home, he said it had been months since someone called him by his first name. His voice cracked when he said it, and I realized something brutal. Success gave me attention, but these people lived lives where attention faded like old photographs. I sat with him for an hour. I said his name as many times as I could, not loudly, but gently, like gifting identity back to a man who had given identity to thousands. When I stood up to leave, he grabbed my wrist with a trembling hand and whispered, "Come again, not as a visitor, but as a son." That sentence didn't just touch me, it rewired me. Driving back home, my eyes burned in a way I didn't understand at first. Tears, something ambition had wrung out of me years ago. I realized that day that a billion-dollar project never made me feel what listening to a lonely old man did. No award ever touched me like hearing someone's forgotten story. No success ever gave me the meaning that came from simply sitting beside someone the world ignored. Money builds skyscrapers, but presence builds souls. I wasn't just stepping away from being a CEO, I was stepping toward being human again. The next day, I began planning the home. Not luxurious, not futuristic, not branded with my legacy. A place where people are treated like stories, not patients. A place where wrinkles are proof of survival, not decay. I didn't want marble floors, I wanted warm hands. I didn't want smart beds, I wanted conversations that lasted until tears. The world calls it foolish for a billionaire to trade power for compassion, but maybe the world has forgotten what power really is. Not domination, not wealth. Power is the ability to heal, to love, to make someone feel seen in a world that looks away too easily. And as I drafted the blueprint, a strange fire lit inside me. Not the hungry ambition that once devoured my life, but a gentler flame, steady, fearless, human. I spent hours shaping the design like it was a second chance at living. Every room must carry warmth. Every wall must hold stories. Every corridor must echo laughter instead of silence. This wasn't a retirement, it was a rebirth. And with every line drawn, every idea placed, every heartbeat poured into the plan, I felt something come alive inside me that success never awakened. For the first time in a lifetime of achievements, I wasn't building for profit. I was building for peace. As I moved deeper into planning the home, something unexpected began happening inside me. A softening, a breaking, a rebuilding all at once, like ice melting into a river that suddenly remembers how to move. I woke up each morning not to notifications, not to alarm clocks, but to purpose. Real purpose, not the manufactured kind that hides behind productivity. I visited the nursing home again and again and again, not out of obligation, but out of hunger for connection, for wisdom, for the kind of truth only people who have lived long enough can speak. Every visit was a chapter, every conversation a mirror, every wrinkled smile a lesson I never learned in boardrooms. I began sitting with them for hours, not to teach, but to listen, and listening became the most profound education of my life. They didn't care about my net worth. They cared about presence, about someone holding their hand without checking a watch, about being heard without rush or agenda. These people, who society labeled old, fragile, finished, they had more life inside them than most millionaires I ever knew. One afternoon, I found myself seated across from a woman named Rose, 91 years old, elegant even in fragility, her voice like a violin tuned by time. She told me she once danced every night for a man she loved, even when their bodies grew tired and the world outside was loud with war. She said love is not measured by years spent together, but by how deeply you show up in the small moments, the grocery trips, the rainy evenings, the quiet breakfasts. Then she looked straight into my eyes, unblinking, unshaken, and whispered, "You can conquer the world and still fail at love." That sentence struck me harder than any boardroom defeat. I sat there speechless as she continued. A life without someone to come home to is a victory with no celebration. And suddenly, the silence around us felt heavier than gold, because it carried truth, a truth I had spent 5 decades outrunning. I had achieved everything except peace. I owned everything except moments. I influenced millions, but ate dinner alone. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her words echoed like footsteps in an empty hallway of my mind. I walked through my home at 3 a.m., noticing how beautiful yet lifeless it looked. Expensive art that couldn't hug me, trophies that couldn't speak, awards that couldn't stay up when I was falling apart. I realized I had been living like a museum, full of achievements, empty of warmth. I built skyscrapers, but never built memories. I hosted conferences, but not conversations that healed me. I bought property, but never built a place where my soul could rest. That realization didn't just sting, it shattered me. And in that shattering, something new was born. The desire to not just exist, but to live. To not just achieve, but to feel. To not just build companies, but to build a life worth coming home to. The next morning, I returned to the nursing home with a notebook and a question. What do you regret the most? I asked it gently, unsure if they would answer, but they did, every voice trembling with honesty. One man said he regretted working too much and loving too little. Another said he wished he apologized sooner, forgiven faster, laughed louder. A woman regretted saving her favorite dress for special occasions that never came. Someone whispered that pride kept him from saying, "I need help." And by the time he finally could, everyone he needed was gone. I wrote every word like scripture. I felt every sentence like a warning from the future speaking back at me. They weren't telling me how to succeed. They were teaching me how to be human. And I wondered, how much of my life did I trade for titles, deadlines, meetings that will mean nothing when I am sitting in a room like this at 90, staring at the door, hoping someone walks in? Will I be a CEO even then? Or will I just be a man longing for another voice to break the silence? Days turned into weeks, and something inside me kept changing slowly, gently, irrevocably. My conversations with the elderly became my foundation for the home I wanted to build. Not just rooms and beds, but gardens where hands could touch sunlight, music halls where old memories could dance again, libraries with books worn soft by time, a place where no one felt like an ending, but like a story still being written. I wanted laughter echoing through hallways, birthdays celebrated like miracles, love letters written again even at 80, even at 90, even when hands shook too much to hold a pen. Because love should not expire. Dreams should not age. Life should not shrink just because the body does. One evening, as I watched residents paint with trembling hands, strokes slow but full of meaning, I realized something I had spent a lifetime ignoring. Time is only precious when shared. That same night, I drove home with my chest aching, not with stress, but with longing, with awareness, with the sudden recognition that I no longer wanted to live alone in success. I wanted someone to share sunsets with, someone to laugh with when the bread burned, someone whose hand I would still want to hold when words faded and memory blurred. And that realization terrified me, because I had always been better at building empires than building love. Yet I felt ready for something different, something softer, something true. That was the moment, the exact moment, when the idea of marriage stopped feeling like a relic from my past and began feeling like a path to my future. Not because I needed someone, but because I finally wanted someone. Not to fix me, not to complete me, but to walk beside me as I learned how to live slowly, kindly, fully. And somewhere in that transformation, life opened a door. There comes a moment in life when the world doesn't just challenge you. It grabs you by the throat and tests whether you truly deserve to keep moving. Pressure becomes painful. Motivation becomes survival. You still show up, but not because you're strong, because collapsing is not an option. You keep breathing even when every breath feels heavy. You keep walking even when your legs feel numb. People see your face, but they don't see the fire burning inside your chest. They don't see the late nights, the silent tears, the fear you swallow just to appear normal. They only see the version of you that pretends everything is fine. Every morning you wake up hoping the world would slow down, just for one day. But it doesn't. Life keeps pushing you forward, even when you're not ready. You try to focus on work, but your mind becomes a battlefield. Notifications feel like bullets. Attention becomes a task. Every expectation feels like a weight on your back. You say, "I'm okay," because it's easier than explaining the storm happening inside your head. But deep down, you're fighting a war nobody knows about. Life does not pause for your pain. Responsibilities keep knocking. Bills keep arriving. People keep asking. The world keeps spinning like a train that doesn't care who falls behind. And you? You're running beside it with bleeding feet, praying you don't get left behind. That's the cruel part. Healing while still running. Smiling while breaking. Leading while hurting. And nobody understands how hard that is. They think strength is loud, but real strength is silent. Real strength is fixing your makeup after crying and then acting like you were just tired. Nothing feels simple anymore. Tiny problems become mountains. A small delay destroys your whole mood. One negative comment ruins your entire day. It's not weakness, it's exhaustion. Your energy is stretched thin, your hope is bending, but something inside you refuses to break. You are tired, but not done. You are wounded, but still walking. So you hold on to the smallest moments, the tiny sparks, a song that hits different, a memory that brings warmth, a message that arrives right when you needed it, a short breath of peace that makes you believe maybe life isn't completely cruel. These small things become your anchors, reminders that beauty still exists, that somewhere in this chaos, there is still a reason to keep going. Inside you, behind all the fear and the tiredness, there is a voice. A quiet voice, small but unshakable. It whispers, "Not yet. Don't stop now." And that whisper becomes your strength. You repeat it every morning, even when you barely believe it. Because a part of you knows, this is not your final form. This is not where your story collapses. This is where you learn how to rise. You are not falling apart. You are transforming. You are not losing. You are learning how to fight differently. Pain is not a sign of weakness. Pain is the price of becoming someone stronger. What feels like the end is often the beginning of a version of you that will one day look back and say, "I survived something that was meant to destroy me, and I kept walking." So you lift your head again. You wipe your face again. You take another breath again. You promise yourself one more chance again. Because inside you lives something stubborn, something powerful, something unbreakable. And whether the world sees it or not, you are still here. You are still fighting. You are still rising. You start noticing yourself choosing differently. Where you once reacted, now you pause. Where you once chased, now you observe. Where you once begged to be understood, now you quietly walk away. This is growth, not loud, but deep. Not explosive, but stubborn. You stop forcing doors that refuse to open. You stop waiting for people who don't return. You stop shrinking just to make others comfortable. You no longer break yourself into pieces for those who never learned to hold you. You protect your energy now. You guard your peace like treasure. You move like someone who finally knows their worth. And with every step, your circle changes. Some people start fading, not because you hate them, but because your soul outgrew the version of you they were attached to. You don't speak the same language anymore. Your priorities shifted. Your vision expanded. You want more from life now, not more things, but more meaning. Not more applause, but more purpose. You want stillness, not noise. You crave depth, not attention. You start surrounding yourself with people who speak growth, who respect time, who value loyalty. People whose presence calms your storms instead of creating new ones. You no longer tolerate chaos just to avoid being alone. You would rather sit with your own soul than entertain anything that disturbs it. Your habits change next. Slowly at first. You sleep earlier. You wake up with intention. You pick up your phone less. You think before speaking. You listen more than you respond. You read. You reflect. You repair yourself in ways nobody can see. You start choosing what feeds your spirit, not what feeds your impulses. You realize discipline is not punishment. It is freedom. It is control. It is self-respect. You learn that consistency builds confidence, and confidence builds a life you don't want to escape from. Your future begins to form through repetition, small actions done daily, invisible to everyone but powerful enough to rewrite your entire destiny. Some days still feel heavy. Healing is not a straight line. There are moments where you slip, where doubt creeps in, where the past tries to pull you back. But now you know how to stand again. You don't drown in setbacks anymore. You float through them. You don't collapse when something goes wrong. You adapt. Every challenge becomes data. Every failure becomes instruction. Every disappointment becomes direction. You no longer ask, "Why me?" You ask, "What next?" You respond with strategy instead of panic. You move with patience instead of desperation. You rebuild yourself not once, but every time life demands it. And slowly, almost without noticing, you become the version of you past you needed. The one who doesn't fear change. The one who holds themselves when nobody else does. The one who wakes up on difficult mornings and still chooses effort. Growth doesn't make your life perfect, but it makes you capable. Strong doesn't mean you don't bend. It means you don't break. Brave doesn't mean you don't feel fear. It means you keep walking with it. Healing does not mean nothing hurts anymore. It means pain no longer controls you. You breathe differently now. Heavier sometimes, but fuller, deeper, clearer. You walk through life aware of your wounds, but not defined by them. Everything you went through taught you how to stand alone without feeling lonely, how to love without losing yourself, how to dream without fearing disappointment. You stop expecting the world to be soft. Instead, you learn how to move through it with calm, grounded feet. You stop demanding fair. You start demanding growth. You stop searching for permission. You start creating your own path. You stop surviving. You start living with intention. There's a steadiness in you now, a strength that doesn't shout, a fire that doesn't burn wildly but glows, controlled, powerful, unshakable. You're not done growing, not even close, but you're no longer lost in the dark. You're walking through it, head up, eyes forward, knowing that you're shaping a future with every step, every breath, every decision. And now, as the days move forward, you realize the power of presence. Not just existing, not just passing time, but truly being. You notice the subtle beauty in the world, the sunlight catching leaves, the quiet hum of life in a busy city, the unspoken connection in a glance. You understand that the richness of life is not measured by what you accumulate or achieve, but by what you experience, what you give, what you feel. Every conversation matters, every choice matters, every moment matters. You no longer let trivial things steal your attention. The noise of the world fades because you've learned to prioritize what is meaningful. Your mind, once scattered by constant pressure, begins to focus. Your heart, once burdened by unresolved pain, begins to open. You carry clarity now, a rare gift shaped by every triumph, every failure, every heartbreak, every lesson. You start embracing vulnerability in ways you never did before. You speak honestly, not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. You feel your fears without letting them dictate your life. You embrace love without hesitation, not because you are naive, but because you understand its value. Trust is no longer given lightly, but it is no longer withheld out of fear. You understand boundaries, but you also understand connection. You recognize that growth often requires discomfort, that transformation demands courage, and that meaningful relationships require presence, patience, and empathy. You are no longer afraid to show your real self, the flawed, the imperfect, the human, because you finally understand that authenticity is your strongest armor. Every morning becomes an opportunity, every night a reflection. You see time not as an enemy, but as a gift, finite and precious, urging you to act deliberately. You move through your days with intentionality. Your work, your relationships, your passions, they are no longer distractions. They are extensions of the life you've consciously chosen. You focus not on doing more, but on being more aware, more connected, more alive. You start noticing small victories, a conversation that mattered, a hand you held, a moment of joy you created or witnessed. These become the markers of a life well lived, the true measure of success. And slowly, imperceptibly at first, you notice a shift in the people around you. They are drawn not to your wealth, your achievements, or your image, but to your presence, your steadiness, your authenticity. Your life begins to inspire silently, not through headlines or accolades, but through simple, consistent living. You realize that impact does not need grandeur, that influence does not require spectacle, that love and attention, given freely and genuinely, ripple farther than you could ever imagine. The world does not notice everything, but those who matter see the change. And that is enough. That is more than enough. You understand that life is not about the next milestone, the next achievement, the next accolade. Life is about moments, about choices, about the deliberate act of creating meaning where there once was none. You learn to celebrate small wins, to acknowledge subtle shifts, to honor personal progress. You accept that you cannot control everything, but you can control how you show up. You cannot prevent storms, but you can master your response. You cannot rewrite the past, but you can sculpt your present into something worth living. Every action, every word, every thought becomes intentional. You no longer drift. You navigate with purpose, with courage, with awareness. And in this state, you discover the deepest truth, that the most profound growth is quiet, humble, and intimate. That the life you build for yourself and others does not need to be grand to be meaningful. That love, presence, patience, and courage are greater legacies than wealth or status. That showing up fully, being kind without expectation, and committing to your own evolution are the marks of a life well lived. You are no longer defined by the past, nor consumed by what lies ahead. You are grounded, present, and alive in a way that you have never been before. And with every passing day, you continue building, not empires, not achievements, not titles, but something far more enduring, a life of presence, purpose, and unshakable authenticity. You realize that this journey is endless because growth is endless. The process does not stop, the evolution does not pause. You will continue to be tested, challenged, and shaped by life. But now, every trial strengthens you rather than diminishes you. You are no longer seeking external validation. You are seeking alignment with your true self. Every decision becomes a reflection of what you value, every action a testament to what you have learned. You understand that life is not a race to finish first, but a journey to show up fully, to be present, and to create meaning for yourself and those around you. You are no longer surviving. You are consciously living, fully awake, fully aware, fully human. Thank you for spending this time with me and for witnessing this journey. Life is about growth, presence, and choosing what truly matters. If this story inspired you, gave you perspective, or reminded you that it's never too late to change, then stay connected. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join me as we continue exploring meaning, purpose, and the human journey together. Your time here matters, and I can't wait to share what comes next with you. Remember, it's never too late to live intentionally, love deeply, and choose what truly matters. Subscribe now, and let's continue this journey together.